Restaurant manager kicks little Bo asking for leftovers. Next day this happens. In the bustling heart of the city stood a quaint restaurant known for its exquisite cuisine and an unwelcoming manager whose stern face rarely broke into a smile. On a particularly brisk evening, the restaurant's doors opened to reveal a young Bo, no more than 10, with eyes that held stories far beyond his years. This Bo, an orphan, had found a semblance of home with a kind elderly woman who had discovered him abandoned and scared on the city streets 4 years ago. Together, they eked out a life filled with modest joys and enduring hardships. The Bo, named Lucas, had learned to navigate the city's alleys and avenues in search of food and kindness. That evening, his journey had led him to the restaurant, driven by hunger and the hope of securing leftovers. With a heart brimming with innocence and need, he approached the counter, his voice barely a whisper as he asked for any spare food. However, the restaurant manager, Mr. Hargrove, was a man of strict principles, seeing the world through a lens of order and discipline. His gaze cold and unyielding, he dismissed the Bo's request with brusque manner and harsh words. Unbeknownst to Mr. Hargrove, this act of callousness was witnessed by a figure standing discreetly in the background. The restaurant's owner, Mr. Elliot Grayson. Mr. Grayson, a millionaire who made routine visits to his numerous establishments, was struck by the scene unfolding before him. His heart clenched at the sight of Lucas's retreating form, a child faced with rejection and deprivation. The sight unearthed memories of his own privileged childhood, sharply contrasting with the reality that confronted him now. The chapter takes a deeper dive into Lucas's life with Mrs. A, the elderly woman who had become his guardian angel. Mrs. A, with her warm smile and gentle ways, had filled the void left by the absence of Lucas's parents. Their home, though humble and lacking in many comforts, was rich in love and care. Lucas, despite the hardships, carried an air of resilience and hope, traits instilled in him by Mrs. A's unwavering optimism. As Mr. Grayson observed Lucas's departure, he felt a stirring responsibility and compassion. In that moment, he made a decision that would not only change the course of Lucas's life, but would also bring to light the forgotten connection between himself and the Bo's guardian. The chapter closes with Mr. Grayson's resolve to right the wrong he had witnessed, setting the stage for a journey of revelation, justice, and renewed hope. After witnessing the harsh dismissal of young Lucas by his restaurant manager, Mr. Elliot Grayson, the owner felt a profound sense of responsibility and compassion. His heart weighed heavy as he stepped outside, his eyes searching for the small retreating figure of the Bo in the dimming light of the city. Catching up to Lucas, Mr. Grayson gently called out to him. Startled, Lucas turned to find a well-dressed stranger approaching with a look of genuine concern. Mr. Grayson knelt down, meeting Lucas at eye level, and introduced himself as the owner of the restaurant. He apologized for his manager's behavior, explaining that it was his policy to assist those in need, a policy clearly violated by his employees' actions. Lucas, wide-eyed and cautious, listened as the man spoke with a sincerity that was hard to dismiss. Mr. Grayson, seeing the skepticism in Lucas's eyes, decided to demonstrate his goodwill. He led Lucas to a nearby store, where he bought him new clothes and a hearty meal. The Bo, overwhelmed by this unexpected kindness, began to open up, sharing snippets of his life with the elderly woman who had taken him in. Moved by Lucas's story, Mr. Grayson accompanied him home, curious to meet the woman who had shown such compassion to an orphan child. As they arrived at a modest but well-kept house, they were greeted by Mrs. A, Lucas's guardian. Mr. Grayson's heart skipped a beat as he recognized her. She was none other than his childhood babysitter, a woman who had once been like a second mother to him. Mrs. A, equally stunned, recognized Mr. Grayson instantly, despite the years that had shaped him into the successful man he was now. The reunion was emotional, filled with tears and laughter as they reminisced about old times. Mr. Grayson learned about the unfortunate circumstances that had led Mrs. A to her current life and how she had found Lucas alone and scared, taking him under her wing. As they talked, Mr. Grayson felt a deep admiration for Mrs. A's selflessness and resilience. He saw in her the same kindness and warmth that he remembered from his childhood. In that moment, he made a decision that would change their lives forever. He offered to provide financial support to both Lucas and Mrs. A, ensuring they would no longer have to struggle for the basics of life. Furthermore, Mr. Grayson proposed to move them to a comfortable home near his estate, where they could live without fear of want. He wanted to ensure that Lucas received a proper education and that Mrs. A could live her years in comfort, and dignity. The offer left Mrs. speechless, tears of gratitude in her eyes, while Lucas looked on, a sense of security slowly dawning in his young heart. The chapter concludes with a sense of hope and the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Mr. Grayson's act of kindness had not only reconnected him with a cherished figure from his past, but also paved the way for a brighter future for Lucas and Mrs. The bond that formed that day was more than just one of benefactor and beneficiaries. It was a reunion of hearts, a coming together of a family long separated by time and circumstance. In the aftermath of the emotional reunion, Mr. Elliot Grayson, the restaurant owner, found himself deeply troubled by the injustice he had witnessed. The cruel dismissal of young Lucas by his manager, Mr. Hargrove, was more than just an isolated act of unkindness. It was a betrayal of the values he had strived to instill in his business. Determined to right this wrong, Mr. Grayson conceived a plan, not only to expose Mr. Hargrove's cruelty, but also to ensure such an incident never occurred again. His plan was simple yet effective. Lucas would return to the restaurant to ask for leftovers, just as he had done before, but this time, it would be a deliberate setup to catch Mr. Hargrove in the act of mistreatment, with Mr. Grayson observing everything discreetly. Before setting this plan in motion, he took steps to secure a brighter future for Lucas and Mrs. O, the elderly woman who had cared for him. He offered them a place to live in a comfortable house near his mansion, a gesture that brought tears of gratitude to Mrs. A's eyes. This new beginning was a ray of hope, a promise of stability and care that they had long been deprived of. As the day of the plan approached, Lucas and Mrs. A settled into their new home, their hearts filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Mr. Grayson, meanwhile, prepared meticulously. He briefed Lucas on how to act and what to say, ensuring the boy understood the purpose of their plan. He also arranged for a discreet video recording to be made to have irrefutable evidence of Mr. Hargrove's behavior. The day arrived with a tense air of expectation. Lucas, dressed in the same clothes he had worn on the day of the initial incident to avoid arousing suspicion, made his way to the restaurant. His heart pounded with a mixture of nervousness and determination. Outside the restaurant, hidden from view, Mr. Grayson watched, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what was likely to unfold, yet hopeful for the change it would bring. As predicted, upon entering the restaurant and repeating his request for leftovers, Lucas was met with the same harsh rebuke from Mr. Hargrove. The manager's disdainful words and callous actions, all captured on camera, mirrored the previous encounter, displaying a clear pattern of cruelty. Mr. Grayson, having witnessed enough, stepped out from his hiding spot and confronted Mr. Hargrove. The manager's face turned pale as he realized the gravity of the situation. Mr. Grayson, with calm authority, revealed the entire setup and the recorded evidence of Mr. Hargrove's inhumane treatment of Lucas. The chapter reaches its climax as Mr. Grayson announces the immediate termination of Mr. Hargrove's employment, making it clear that such behavior would never be tolerated in any of his establishments. He also made a solemn promise to ensure that Mr. Hargrove would not find employment in the restaurant industry again, using his influence to protect others from similar mistreatment. In the aftermath, Mr. Grayson turned to Lucas, his eyes soft with compassion, and reassured him that justice had been served. The chapter closes with a sense of triumph and relief as Lucas and Mrs. begin to truly embrace their new life, free from fear and full of promise, under the protective wing of Mr. Grayson. The final chapter of this heartwarming tale unfolds with a dramatic crescendo, as young Lucas, bolstered by the support of Mr. Elliot Grayson, the restaurant owner, and Mrs. his guardian, steps once more into the lion's den, the restaurant managed by the callous Mr. Hargrove. The air is thick with anticipation as Lucas, with a bravery far beyond his years, repeats the now familiar request for leftovers. As expected, Mr. Hargrove's response is swift and harsh, his words sharp and unfeeling as he scolds Lucas. However, this encounter is unlike the previous ones. This time, Lucas is not alone in his plight. Hidden from view, Mr. Grayson watches, his resolve firm as he prepares to unveil the truth in a decisive confrontation. The moment Mr. Hargrove finishes his tirade, Mr. Grayson steps out from his concealment, his presence immediately commanding the attention of everyone in the restaurant. The room falls into a stunned silence as Mr. Grayson reveals his identity and the purpose of his visit. He confronts Mr. Hargrove with undeniable evidence of his cruelty, the recorded interaction leaving no room for excuses or denial. In a dramatic turn of events, Mr. Grayson announces the immediate dismissal of Mr. Hargrove from his position. But he doesn't stop there. Mr. Grayson declares his intention to use his influence to ensure that Mr. Hargrove will not find work in the restaurant industry again. A decisive action to protect others from similar mistreatment. The scene is one of palpable tension, but also of liberation and justice. Lucas watches, a mixture of awe and relief in his eyes, as the man who had once intimidated him is held accountable for his actions. Mr. Grayson's interventions not only serve as a punishment for Mr. Hargrove, but also as a powerful statement of his commitment to compassion and fairness. As the story reaches its conclusion, Lucas and Mrs. E embark on a new chapter in their lives, one filled with hope and security thanks to Mr. Grayson's generosity. They settle into their new home near Mr. Grayson's mansion, where they are welcomed with open arms and given the chance to live a life free of the hardships they had known. The impact of Mr. Grayson's actions ripples through the community, inspiring a wave of kindness and generosity. People are moved by the story of the wealthy restaurant owner who stood up for a young orphan aunt, an elderly woman, challenging the status quo and advocating for justice. The community begins to come together in new ways, extending help to those in need and fostering a culture of compassion and empathy. The story, blending elements of drama, emotion, and justice, leaves its readers with a powerful message. The impact of kindness can be profound and far-reaching, and standing up against injustice is not just a responsibility, but a catalyst for change. As news of Mr. Grayson's act of justice spread throughout the city, the story caught the attention of a local newspaper. Intrigued by the heartwarming tale, a journalist reached out to Mr. Grayson, requesting an interview to learn more about his motivations and the impact of his actions. During the interview, Mr. Grayson humbly shared his belief that it was a moral obligation to stand up against injustice, especially when it involved the mistreatment of vulnerable individuals like young Lucas and Mrs. He emphasized that every person, regardless of their background or circumstances, deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. The article that resulted from the interview touched the hearts of many readers, inspiring them to reflect on their own actions and consider how they could make a positive difference in their communities. Messages of support and encouragement flooded in, expressing gratitude for Mr. Grayson's unwavering compassion and reminding others of the power of empathy and kindness. Spurred by the overwhelming response, Mr. Grayson decided to establish a foundation dedicated to helping children in need and supporting organizations that shared his belief in justice and compassion. The foundation would provide scholarships, mentorship programs, and resources to underserved communities, empowering young individuals to overcome adversity and create a brighter future. Through this initiative, Mr. Grayson hoped to inspire others to take action, reminding them that even small acts of kindness can have a tremendous impact. The foundation quickly gained momentum, attracting donations from various philanthropists and individuals who were eager to contribute to the cause. As the foundation grew, it expanded its reach beyond the city, impacting the lives of countless children and families across the country. The ripple effect of Mr. Grayson's initial act of compassion continued to spread, fostering a nationwide movement of empathy and social change. In recognition of his contributions, Mr. Grayson was awarded numerous accolades, including the prestigious Humanitarian of the Year award. However, he remained humble, always emphasizing that it was the collective effort of individuals coming together that truly made a difference. The story of Lucas, Mrs. A, and Mr. Grayson became a symbol of hope and resilience, reminding people that even in the face of adversity, there are individuals who are ready to stand up for what is right. It served as a powerful reminder that a single act of kindness can ignite a spark of change that reverberates far beyond the confines of a restaurant or a single community. With their newfound stability and the support of Mr. Grayson's foundation, Lucas and Mrs. A thrived. Lucas discovered a love for music and pursued his dreams of becoming a talented pianist. Mrs. A, on the other hand, dedicated her time to supporting other struggling families, offering guidance and compassion to those who needed it most. As time went on, their story continued to inspire people from all walks of life, serving as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. The legacy of their journey intertwined with Mr. After witnessing the harsh dismissal of young Lucas by his restaurant manager, Mr. Elliot Grayson felt a profound sense of responsibility and compassion. He apologized to Lucas, offered him new clothes and a meal, and accompanied him home to meet Mrs. A, who turned out to be Mr. Grayson's childhood babysitter. Touched by Mrs. A's selflessness, Mr. Grayson offered financial support and a comfortable home for both Lucas and Mrs. Determined to right the wrong, Mr. Grayson devised a plan to expose Mr. Hargrove's cruelty and ensure justice. With irrefutable evidence, Mr. Hargrove was dismissed, and Mr. Grayson vowed to protect others from similar mistreatment.